What's up, everyone? This is DeagleBeagle, and today we're going to look at Porygon 2 because I feel like, with all due respect to Neil VGC and Jamie Boyd, that they did not have the best ideas for Porygon 2. I used this in a tournament, in Katori's tournament, and Terra Psychic Size Shock was actually really good, especially versus Assault Vest hands. And yeah, this set is great. Recover is not completely necessary, but Neil was saying something about Terra Fairy Blast, and I was like, what? Uh, when you could just use Scythe Shock and go through the Assault Vest in a sense. And Terra Psychic's good for resisting fighting, which Porygon 2 is weak to, and possibly another move like Expanding Force. So Terra Psychic seems pretty good. You don't have to use Recover though. You could use like Thunderbolt. It depends on how you want to play Porygon 2. Thunderbolt or some other move like Ice Beam. It depends on your team. But in general, Recover is pretty good, especially if they're trying to like protect, stall out your Trick Room or whatever. That kind of gives Porygon 2 the niche, not just Eviolite, but having Bulk and Recover. You can just keep it alive and force them to play a certain way to beat it that other Trick Roomers can't do. Now, as far as the ability and stats go, let's go over the ability. I typically prefer download because 50% of the time, or more, if you know what this says and will manipulate it. Like it says, on switch in, attacker special attack is raised one stage based on the foe's weaker defense. So if you kind of know, especially in a best of three, what their weaker defense is, assuming they don't switch, you can kind of know that you'll get a special attack boost. But even on the first game, let's just say, I'll just say like 50% of the time you'll get a special attack boost. So 50% of the time you'll get something useful. Now, analytic will not be very useful because you typically want to use Trick Room with Porygon 2. And then Trace, you could trace like any ability. It could be some useless ability. It could be some ability you don't want to trace. But typically that's not the issue. The ability is just, or it's just that the issue with it is to me, you're more likely to trace an ability that doesn't help you very much compared to download, which helps you at least 50% of the time. So I would usually recommend download, and trace might be good for like intimidate or whatever, but there's not a ton of abilities. Well, I guess there are a lot of Pokemon do have good abilities, but my point is their ability might be useful for that Pokemon and not for Porygon 2. It just depends. So you could use a different Terra type with it if you want, like Terra Dark to be immune to um, Prankster Taunt, but you're still weak to fighting, so I don't think I would personally use Porygon 2 like that. It just depends. I mean, it is pretty bulky. You can wall some fighting moves. In fact, you should at least give it um, 28 defense to wall a close combat from Urshifu, but you probably want a little bit more, like Swords of Ruin, wall of Swords of Ruin, close combat, for example. You don't have to, though. Nah, actually, that would take too much. Yeah, that would take too much. Forget it. Chances are it's not going to get one-shotted by almost anything. I mean, I guess you could actually do a Jolly Sword of Ruins while that, and you would need less, but you don't need, I mean, you don't need all that defense probably. You often would want special defense too. And as far as the ability goes, or sorry, the nature, I would generally recommend Quiet because you notice its special attack is the highest base stat it has. So it's more efficient typically to run Quiet, and you don't even have to give it EVs. You could just give it Quiet and then like put the rest in bulk. So These aren't specific EVs, by the way. I just kind of evened out the defense and special defense. But if you look at the tier list, the common, I mean, I just feel like it's more commonly going to get hit hard by a special attack unless it's a fighting move which super affects it. So I kind of ran a little bit more special defense with it because I don't know, I just felt like Flutter Main or whatever might hit it hard, but there are a lot of physical attackers, so maybe I actually should give it more defense. I don't know. We'll see. Okay, and I would probably just even it out for now, and you can then figure out what you want to do with it. And Terra Ghost is probably better than Terra Dark because you're immune to fake out, you're immune to fighting attacks which super affect it. Um, and again, you don't need necessarily recover, even though I personally would use probably recover. I would probably use just these four moves on almost every Porygon2, unless you really need some coverage move like Ice Beam or Thunderbolt. But typically, I would prefer to run Psyshock with it because the Pokemon that super affected are typically weak to it, like Iron Hands, Urshifu. Unless the fighting Pokemon stop running Assault Vest, I would keep running Psyshock. Otherwise, use Psychic to kill him a little bit easier because Urshifu does have high defense, unfortunately, for Porygon2. Uh, and I'm still using Psyshock though because while Urshifu may not be Assault Vest like Iron Hands might, and what else? Other fighting Pokemon. There's not a lot of other fighting Pokemon, but when you could say half of the fighting Pokemon could use Assault Vest, then I would probably run Psyshock. Hitmontop's not used that much. It probably wouldn't run Assault Vest, but I guess it could. Actually, that's a good item for him. I might run Assault Vest over Citrus Berry with it, but I think I already had Assault Vest with something else, so I ended up running like Citrus with it, and I think that those are the gonna be the most common, probably the most common for like fighting Pokemon. Maybe Blaziken, but I haven't seen that yet. So so yeah, I would run this. Tri Attack's just really good for a stab move, and you could do pretty much a lot of damage in general with it, especially if you get a download boost or at least a decent chunk. And I think that pretty much covers almost everything. You could use some other moves like Eerie Impulse, mm, even Sunny Day, maybe, or Rain Dance or something on a specific team, but probably not. These other moves like Icy Wind, I wouldn't probably use because you already have Trick Room. It's moves like Icy Wind and Trick Room are better on like Crafts, where it naturally has more speed than Porygon2, where you can kind of use a mix of Icy Wind and Trick Room. But yeah, I'd probably use Porygon2 this way. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for the next one.